Hello, my name is Dr. Thomas Hughes, and this is the very first episode of the Cube LA podcast. On this first episode, I am very excited and honored to welcome my good friend, Dr. Richard Long. He's a dentist that works down in the Washington, D.C. area. He is thoughtful, he is kind, he is hilarious. He's all sorts of things that make me very happy to have known him for this long. Ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, and welcome to the stage, Dr. Richard Long. I have to do that, otherwise the audio when I link up the audio, it's not gonna catch on. So
you have to do the
You don't have to, but it helps. If you look, you see that little That's the thing. So when I link up the audio and the video, it'll mix. So also you got to take the mic. You're supposed to have experience with this. Take the mic.
I do.
You got to bring it close to your face there.
Not too close. You don't want it to sound like
it won't, but you got to get pretty close. There you go.
Hello.
Right there's pretty good. Yeah, I think we're.
Hello.
You know what? Well, I'm happy to have you here. Took you a minute.
Good to be here.
The crowd's going wild. Richard's.
It was kind of late.
Richard's here.
Little off on the time, but
wait,
I made it.
First of all, where were you?
You
said you you texted me 12 to 2, and 3 o'clock rolled around. We got some terrible news, which you might talk about. We got some terrible news, and then 5 o'clock rolls around, and here you come to get Chipotle.
So I was in Silver Spring,
Maryland.
Basically, I was goofing off with a friend or two, and then I got the news, and I kind of was like, all right. I figured if I was in Maryland somewhere, that would help me to be closer to Baltimore. So I was like, all right, as long as I'm in the vicinity, I can dart up. Didn't take into account the afternoon traffic, but I made it.
Did you only come up here because you got the news that Kobe Bryant came to talk to you?
I knew I was on a mission. I had to get here to, do the podcast. So I'm here today.
Well, look, I appreciate it because I know you're busy. One of the reasons why I had you come up here is because of how busy you are, right? So, how long have we known each other?
Let's see, 8. So from 8 till now. So what's that?
That's 12 years.
Suck at math.
I think you can do those numbers. That's 12 years.
12 years. Yeah.
11, 12 years. I think.
It's pretty long.
I've known you for a long time, and one of the things that I'm realizing, because I don't know if you remember this, but I texted you. Might have been a year or so ago, and I was like, "Man, do you remember how far you come? Like with the dental school thing? I don't know if you remember that text message. You seemed confused when I texted it to you. Like, why are you
random.
texting me?
So it was random. What are we doing?
It was random, but I think that was one of those moments where I was really looking back on everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think when I first met you, were you talking to Sabri outside of the library? That's what I have visualized in my head.
You know, it's funny because Sabri and I were actually in some sort of like weird love triangle at the time.
You sure you want to talk about that on camera?
It's fine. No one cares.
Okay.
But yeah, like at the time it was this weird situation. But I think, maybe we were outside talking.
I vaguely remember. Walking, and I remembered Sabri from high school. So I must have been a sophomore. We were both sophomores, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
And you were talking to Sabri, and I wanted to say hi to Sabri because I knew him from high school, and you were standing there. I had no idea who you were, and I really didn't want to talk to you. Not because, no personal reason or anything. I just, Like I meet new people and I'm just like, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I think I saw you maybe the next week or a couple weeks after that. And for whatever reason, you were talking to me and I was like, oh man, this dude is cool. That sounds like you, right?
Pretty
just
much.
talking to people.
In a nutshell.
Make sure the mic is close to you. Trust me, when I'm hooking up these mics, I've learned.
It's like you gotta talk close.
Yeah, I've just learned. So, and I don't know what happened after that, but we were just friends afterwards.
Yep, sounds about right.
I don't remember.
I actually honestly don't know what happened after that either. I feel like it was a combination of like the classes we were taking, and I think like the people we were around, and then the trek. Like we were on the same kind of course load, and so when we finally got to the point of us like meeting and stuff, it's like, oh, we can also study.
Yeah.
Oh, we're also in the same class here and here and here. So it's just kind of like it kind of came together.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things, and I can't explain. You know, one thing I think during that time when I texted you that I wanted to thank you. I just didn't know how to do it because you didn't know this. But you might know it now. I'm not the most social person.
You're not. Yes. Yes, you're not.
I'm not.
Yes.
Right? By the time I met you, I think I had gotten back from a summer program, and I had just like switched to pre-med, right? And I was...
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I had just switched to pre-med, and I was all in, right? But for me, I was just about the books, and I didn't really feel like meeting anybody, right? That was obvious from the time that I'd seen you. But after I met you, though, I actually started going to parties and stuff. You remember that?
I feel like that makes it sound like I was a bad influence, but yeah, I remember.
No. You weren't a bad influence. You weren't a bad influence. I just remember that, and I think to myself, like, what I would have been doing had I not had the social aspect added on to
Studying and passing class.
I was doing that.
Even though he did anyway.
Yeah, I was doing it anyway. But you can't just, I'm psyched now,
Yeah.
right? And I think I'm looking back on that stuff, and I'm realizing you can't have just one and not the other.
You need to balance.
Yeah, you need a balance. So I think at that time I was being a dude and just wanted to thank you with that text. So now I'm doing this this podcast, right? This is, we're looking at the audios, and we got a visual here too. So that's hopefully all of that is going well. But the reason why I started this podcast is because I'm doing a lot more of that reflecting, right? I'm looking back on people in my life and things in my life that have changed over time. And I realized I know a lot about you. I don't know everything about you, but the little bit that I do know is quite interesting.
All right. What do you know? Shoot.
Well, I'm not going to, you would be the one to tell the stories.
Oh, okay. Because I was like,
no, it's, I mean, I wouldn't.
I'm kind of curious.
No. I wouldn't have you on if I thought it was embarrassing. You're the one that was about to tell about a love story.
Hey, man, it is what it is. Life is crazy in undergrad.
So wait. So doing what I do, I'm child and adolescent psych. I don't just work with adults anymore. Actually, I prefer working with kids. It's, you start early on with them and you can sort of help them get further along with their life, starting off early, right? And what I've learned over time is how important it is in childhood, learning what a person goes through, learning who the people that they're around.
Yeah.
And I don't know anything about your childhood. I know you and your dad are the funniest.
He just called.
Yeah, he just called. Yeah, you're the funniest pair ever, right? But see, I didn't grow up with my dad around after the age of 9, right? You did. And I remember, again, when we were hanging out, your dad would always have you come back home.
Every time.
Every time.
It was weird because it was almost like he could not believe that I was studying that much, which I'm not even going to lie, a lot of the time I wasn't. Okay. There was a lot of time where, you were there. We would go hang out and stuff. But I'll never forget, he told me, he was like, ain't that much studying in the world. And like, I was basically in the library, like trying to study for a final.
Oh, okay.
But it was good because he kind of kept me grounded because there were times I felt like, all right, like I'm out a little too much, but most of the time I was trying. I think he just thought, he was basing it off his past. And
well, they're different. They're old.
Yeah, that too. I think he, different career path also. Maybe he didn't know, the grind, but I got the concept. I knew what he was trying to go for, I guess.
I think the grind is something a lot of people don't fully understand. The grind is sort of why it took us so long to like actually sit down for this podcast.
Yeah, every friend is like, "Oh, you've been in school for like half my life, and
yeah,
just starting to work." I'm like, "Dang."
I run into that quite a bit, man. It's still run into that quite a bit. So wait, let's go back though. So another reason I wanted to do the podcast is because both of us are successful, right? Graduated from graduate school, right? African American men, didn't come from like a rich. We didn't grow up in like the worst neighborhoods ever, but we didn't exactly grow up in.
Nope.
Yeah. We didn't grow up in. It wasn't like the most dangerous. I mean, Richmond, you were in Mechanicsville, right?
Yeah, so I had a little bit more of the light side, but yeah, it wasn't like all, rainbows and unicorns.
Of course. Yeah. And I think that before I get into learning about your history, so we're not done. We're not off that subject yet. Before we get into that's what I'm driving at. So for people who did not come from, I don't know, an advantaged background, for us to have made it to where we are, again, I'm starting to realize that this wasn't the easiest journey.
Well, I think mainly the obstacles you have to overcome, at least from my standpoint. I don't know about, as much as where you lived, but from my standpoint, it was more about overcoming, the obvious, the social norms when it comes to the whole black-white thing, like, or the dealing with a situation where you're in an environment or putting yourself in an environment that you don't necessarily belong or feel like you belong. So it was overcoming that. And then my dad growing up in the South, him telling me about all these stories of what he dealt with, how he managed, and then painting this image in my head early on about how it was kind of influenced my picture of like what I had to fight through. Right. So I had to overcome a lot of mental barriers, I think, to get to this point. And that to me was the biggest, I guess you could say, like, hurdle I had to jump.
Okay. Let's go back. I don't need like your earliest memories, but what I'm interested in particular, what city do you remember growing up in? Where were you? Did you move around a lot or what?
Not yes and no. Because Richmond was always the main place.
So you were always in Richmond?
Yeah, okay. But no, I wasn't. Because like right around 3rd grade, 4th grade, I moved to Newport News. And I was there for actually, no, 2nd, 3rd. 2nd and 3rd grade, I was in Newport News. And then I moved back up to Richmond right around 3rd, 4th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so Richmond was always like the main influence, but down there kind of influenced me a little bit too.
Right.
Actually, a lot of it.
This is eastern part of Virginia.
Yes.
Okay. All right. You see
like southeast.
Richmond, Virginia is
like Virginia Beach area, like that area, Tidewater.
People, if you're listening, for out of my 5 viewers,
all five of them,
all 5 viewers, if you're in a different part of the country and this is on YouTube or something, Richmond, Virginia, obviously is in Virginia. It's in Central Virginia. Richard is talking about the eastern part of Virginia. Did you say Norfolk?
Huh?
Where'd you say, Norfolk?
Nah, Newport News.
Newport News. Okay, that's eastern part of Virginia.
757.
757, a completely different type of city and area. So you were there for a couple years.
Yes.
What you're saying. Okay, all right. So you were there for a couple years. What, 3rd and 4th grade?
Yeah, the 2nd, 3rd, and then I moved up for 4th. Yeah.
Was your sister? Was she alive?
She was down there too.
She was there too. Okay, all right. So now you came back to Richmond.
Yep.
Were you in that same house?
Yeah, yep. Never moved.
Okay. All right. So it was you, same house, never moved. Okay. You, your mom, your sister.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
So you also had to factor in, like where I lived, I think didn't really, I guess, influence me as much as what I was around during the day. So like schools where majority you're around those people, the teachers, the students, like all day long. So that whole dynamic, I think, influences a lot. And I had different perspectives throughout the entire time. Like elementary, it was a predominantly African American situation.
Or you talking about in Eastern Virginia?
I was in Richmond.
Richmond.
I was in basically Highland Park area for school.
Oh, yeah.
So I, went to school around, I guess, people who were like me, or not like me necessarily, but, were similar in terms of what they were interested in. Same color, obviously.
Okay.
And, urban environment. So I saw that like up close.
Right.
Then I went all the way up to middle school. After middle school, I went to, in middle school, I went to Benford, which is like in the West End. But like not the nice West End, Henrico, like West End, Jackson Ward, like that. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So I got to see that too.
Okay.
And so I think that whole thing really got me, it gave me a nice perspective or picture of the urban environment and like how we had to come up through that. And then I transitioned out to Hanover afterward for high school.
Okay.
Couldn't play basketball for TJ because insurance and my mom.
Oh, you were at TJ.
I went for a little bit and then I had to retransfer or rezone or whatever it's called because my mom, we lived in Mechanicsville, but my mom taught in Richmond. So I was allowed to go to Richmond Public Schools because it's near her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So for people listening, Richmond Public Schools, it's I'm not saying it's like it's bad or anything, but it's city funded.
Rough.
It's rough. It can get rough depending upon what part of the city you live in, like many other cities. So you're essentially saying you went from a better place to a not so good place, and then you went to
probably no, you can argue this opinion. So I went from TJ to Lee Davis, which is in Hanover. So, just background on that, Lee Davis or General Lee's a Confederate general. So essentially I was there with the Confederates. That was the mascot of the school. So you can imagine the change, and the dichotomy between the two and how it was like an adjustment.
Well, I'll tell you, let's not imagine. Tell me about that, because I only went to predominantly black.
It was an adjustment. Just like everything else, it was an adjustment. I had to relearn who I was in this setting. Like I had to be, I guess what would be considered, it's middle school, high school, so it's like everyone's opinions and teasing and kind of commentary is like really influential on who you are. So I had to find myself within the identity of being okay in that setting. Which means instead of concerning myself about, when the Jordans are coming out or when, whose sports team is this and that, I had to kind of like get with the flow of what was going on around me, kind of like do what the Romans do. I had to kind of flow with it, and even my slang, how I dressed, my whole demeanor changed. Like instead of wearing the 3XTs and the big jerseys, I kept with it for a little bit, but I had to basically find my niche within that environment, but at the same time not lose who I was in myself. So then I met Mike, and after that, Mike's my best friend. So after that, it kind of like it was like a home away from home. I found a guy who was like, same as me, kind of knew what to do, played basketball on the team with me. So
what grade was this when you met
this
Mike?
This was ninth.
Also ninth grade. This is just when you went to
high
school.
Freshman. Yep.
Okay.
Freshman. So then I got zoned again. So it's like every
you were at Lee Davis.
Yeah, Lee Davis. So I transferred from Lee Davis, which I'm not gonna say. Put it like this: Lee Davis is like more in the country setting.
Yeah,
it's more rural.
Yes,
very
rural.
I went from that to suburbia. Like well-off family, Hanover High School.
Right.
And so when that happened, it was the same type of I guess adjusting, but it wasn't that much. I think the difference was now instead of dealing with the rural people, I dealt with the more affluent people. Whatever. Okay. So it was different. It was another adjustment.
Okay.
So I got to see that dynamic too. It was really interesting seeing the I guess the lifestyle and the cultural basis of each group socially, like that I was around.
Right. And
still maintaining friends in all those different areas and still being me in those different areas. It was a lot of like figuring out.
I noticed. Yeah, you still did that when I met you.
Pretty much. Yeah, the VCU was just, and so I went from black, white to just everything. And I'm like, all right, this is VCU. What now?
Yeah. So when you're in middle school, high school, you're having to do that in school, but you also have family life.
Yeah.
Right? We talked a little bit about you and your hilarious dad, how there was sort of a difference of opinion in how to approach work, right?
Oh, it's more than that, but yeah.
Well, you can talk about it if you want to, my friend. But what I'm interested in is how a person goes from so many different environments and still maintains themselves. Is there something that stood out to you that you had to do actively, or was this just something that's a part of your personality?
I think most of it was my personality. I think it also had to do with my parents because they were so open. Even though in my mind they were restrictive, looking back they were very open when it came to bringing people in.
Okay.
Like, there was never, oh no, we can't. It was more like, okay, well, let's find out how we couldn't. Like my dad. One thing I got from him, I think, is like, it's almost like the attitude of, it's like never say die. Like, he will always look for the reason how or the way how he can help. Okay. Versus looking at why he can't or the reasons he can't. And so I feel like that attitude of openness and kind of, the inviting type of thing made it easy for me to adapt to other people adapt to other people and kind of, I guess in a sense, just blend in wherever I was. I think the other thing that made it tricky though was that my dad was very much, he grew up in an environment where he really didn't have to have that opinion. Like, he basically dealt with a lot of racism, and so his view of the world was kind of skewed when it came to that. Like, it's like, well, I know how these people are, and I don't like this, and I don't like that. But I think religion also played a role, like, in his demeanor and how he dealt with people, and that influenced me too.
So a couple things. I want to go back to that, definitely.
Yeah.
Well,
you were asking about work ethic.
Well, not even work ethic, but you mentioned something in this work ethic, but you're having to use that work ethic. You use that work ethic later on in life. But what I was driving at is you mentioned some restrictions. Right? No, this is important.
Yeah,
this is important. You mentioned some restrictions.
Yeah.
Because I will always say this about you. I always respected how much you respected what your parents wanted. You make jokes. So you make jokes about how sometimes you didn't actually do what you said you were going to do, but I think you did more than most.
Oh yeah,
in terms of respecting them.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely.
Yeah, I know. I saw it.
I think the biggest problem with me in that situation was I just looked at my sister who was 5 years younger than me.
Yes.
And she was doing, like, she was the first person to stay out past 12. Like, when we were growing up.
Your sister was?
Yeah, she was the first person to go somewhere overnight, like spend the night in someone's house. And they usually say like the guy has more freedom in the house than the girl. The girl's usually like more protected and sheltered and this, that. Yeah. In my house, no. It was like, oh, well, maybe with this one we can be strict, and then with this one we'll just see how it is when you let them, free. Yeah. And obviously I think it influenced us in different ways, but I'll say, when it came to restrictions, I had a lot of willpower and integrity when it came to just staying the course, because I guess the thought in my mind was I just need to finish this and then I'll be out, and I don't even have to go back. I'll be out of the house and I'll never have to rely on anything. And it worked out. Yeah, it was a super long road, but
what restrictions did you have?
Let's see. So one of the main rules that I broke religiously was come back by a certain time. Usually that time was, I think the original time was like 12.
Is this in high school or is this in college?
High school. And then I kept pushing it. No, end of high school though. Not all through, just like 12th grade, senior year. Okay. College, it became like, okay, well, we're going to push it to 2 o'clock because we know, that 2 o'clock rule.
Oh, yeah. No. We ain't doing that.
I was out till like 3, 4, like sometimes didn't come back. And all they wanted was just a simple phone call, which I get now. Like, I get it. They just wanted to know I was safe. But me, in my mind, it's like, no, they just want to track me. Yeah. Thank God the whole Find Your Friends app and all that wasn't around.
Wait, so when you were in high school, can you think of some restrictions that they had on you? I know you had to get home one time.
Let's see, in high school, no, it was, I think most of the restrictions dealt with like, I guess, well, there were daily things like dinner. Like, it was a thing that we had to be at home by 6 o'clock for dinner. Right. Like, I don't care if, we were doing I don't know, something with a friend that was down the street, or, we were right around the corner. We had to be at the table at 6. And if we weren't, it was a problem. I think Bible study on Thursdays, because of basketball practice, I had a lot of leeway with that. Like I could, be at practice. Yeah. Same thing with the dinner. Like if basketball practice was happening or track, I was there. But typically when it came to restrictions, I think that's the main one I remember, because I don't know, like we were starting to, come into our own, me and my sister. So I don't think they were trying to hold us back as much.
Yeah.
But most of the restrictions came with leaving the house or being back at the house by a certain time.
It sounds like you had some structure.
Yeah, whether it was dinner or whether it was just being out late.
Yeah.
But that was it. I don't think we were necessarily chained to the wall, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But I mean, so you did your homework. Did they ever have to get on you for stuff like that, or were you just the type of kid that did what they were supposed to do?
Relatively, yeah. So obviously I was gonna the overall picture looked nice.
Okay.
But for example, I said I suck at math. So like calculus, I hated that class.
You hated calculus.
So I often would skip that. And when the grades came back, they were kind of like, okay, what is this?
Okay.
And so that's when the whole...
Oh, they would see your report card and say, what is...
So that's when the whole... Now, instead of letting me have the freedom, then they're like, all right, we're going to be on top of you now to see, are you doing the homework?
Mm-hmm.
Are you actually trying? But most, I guess overall, I was okay. I think another restriction, I'm just remembering, when I learned how to drive, I think it was kind of a gateway into this opportunity for me to just be away.
I know.
I was like, yes, like I can escape.
There's so much of the stuff that you're telling me. It's like I can see you like 5 years prior to me meeting you, and you're still doing the Yeah,
pretty much. So oftentimes I would, my friends, I'm the guy with the car, because a lot of my friends, they couldn't afford one of their parents, did it. My dad and my mom were very good at saving and being economically sound when it came to budgeting and things like that. So when I would get in the car, it's like, oh, Rich, where you going? Oh, hey, like, can you give me a ride to the such and such, to the mall, to the corner store? I'm the guy. I'm the taxi. Yeah. I was the Uber. So I picked them up. I swoop up like 10 other people. We just all be in the car having a good time.
Yeah.
I come home. My dad's like, you wasted the gas. Like, you're not the taxi. Like, why you keep doing this? They're not going, when you need help, where are they going to be? They don't have a car. Right. You're going to put wear and tear. And, from them, it was like, blah, blah, blah. But I knew that in the back of my head, I knew that he was right. It was just more so of when am I going to get to experience these things? It's kind of like FOMO. Like, I have the opportunity to have all my friends with me right now. You're telling me to not do it? I don't know.
Yeah,
so that was it.
You were fighting for your freedom.
Basically.
You were a teenager.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
That's what it sounds like.
It's a constant battle.
Yeah. So I want to, so I took it back a step because I wanted to hear a little bit more about the structure that you had when you were younger, right?
Yeah.
Because I always think that influences a person later on in life. One thing that you mentioned was Bible study.
Yeah.
I remember you having to not miss Bible study.
Yeah.
Even post-college.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about religion, how it has influenced you, what it means to you. Right? That's kind of what I want to hear about. And I was always curious as to how, because the stuff that we did, the classes we were involved in were all science-based classes. Right?
Yeah.
Was there ever any clash between your faith and what you wanted to do in the future and what you were studying?
All right. So the first question about the religion, I think that helped because it helped a ton. Actually, it was probably one of the main components just because going into the field that I chose and choosing the road I did wasn't necessarily, again, like I was saying earlier, the path of least resistance. Like there was a lot of mental and I guess somewhat of a societal role in saying in my brain, basically kind of causing some friction for me to go forward easily.
Right.
And I think having faith and having that religious basis to say, if you work at something and you have faith, you believe in it, you pray about it, it will come to pass. And having that, I guess, structure in the background of, I guess, moral integrity with that, all that combined kind of led me to believe as long as I'm doing right by what I'm supposed to, things will work out. And I think, when times got rough, like if I failed something, or if I felt like I wasn't getting something, or if I felt like I wasn't passing, any circumstance where I had to climb a hurdle, I think, even in the relationships and stuff in school, everything, just religion really helped me to say, like, I'm okay, like I'm grounded, like it's cool, and it'll all work out. Not necessarily always because I did something, but because I have faith that, the man upstairs will push me through and everything. So it was kind of like a twofold thing, but I had to do my part. So that's how religion influenced me in terms of maintaining throughout the time from high school up. But as far as science and religion clashing, I think that's almost like as popular as what's the argument about capital punishment versus what is it, the death penalty or whatever,
Capital punishment, I think, is death penalty.
Oh, well, capital punishment versus the other thing. I like that argument.
Oh, life in prison?
Yeah. I think it's similar to that. It's like, all right, well, which one do they both like do the same thing, or are they intertwined? Like, it's kind of, you can argue that. And I think with religion, with religion and science, I'll say, there's always a creation story, and there's a way to explain things, I guess, methodically through, science, scientific method, hypothesis, blah, blah, blah. And then there's things that happen that you can't explain that are complicated. Not saying that everything's explained through religion, like it's a magical eraser, like, oh, well, you can't explain this, religion, but yeah. I think at the end of the day, it's more so about knowing where it applies versus trying to make it blend. I'm not sitting here, saying this guy had a mutation because God wanted it, or this guy didn't because God said he shouldn't. It's more like whatever happened, it's a process of life, but I just believe that the way that it was brought to be may all just be in the divine plan of how it was supposed to. Yeah. Like, the reason evolution happened is because that's how it was supposed to come to be. Like, the reason why molecules divide the way they do, or why we can inject someone with anesthetic and they don't feel anything, is because these things were created all in the beginning. It was all by design. Or maybe it wasn't, but it just happened to be developed. Yeah. So I think just trying not to make it a thing, and just appreciating and respecting what it is, and kind of acknowledging that it is what I did with that. So it never really bothered me, the whole religion, the two. Yeah. No, I
definitely understand it. And I've always thought you had respect for both, and it was sort of, you were one of the first people that I interacted with that was
did it again.
Truly. My family is religious, but that's family.
Yeah.
I'm not religious. I'm not religious at all.
I know.
I'm agnostic, right?
Yes. Which I didn't even know what that was until I met you. I was like, all right, agnostic is not atheist, but then it's like, well, what are you? Like,
it's just not it's not a thing that
you're like, not anything.
Right. Doesn't come into play for me, but it came into play for you.
Yeah.
And I think from knowing you and knowing how that influenced you, I saw the benefits of it.
Yeah.
From knowing you.
Yeah.
This is what I'm talking about. Like, I think there was a lot of things that I did not know when I entered VCU. And for somebody like yourself, right, to be able to sort of play both sides of the coin with people, right, and also be able to take value in religion and also in the science that you're studying.
Yeah.
Like, I hadn't really seen that before. Like, it was either you are religious or you're not religious.
Yeah.
Either you're going to church or you're not going to church.
I think another thing too, there was a book, I don't remember the name of the book, but a geneticist wrote it. And out of all the people, I would think that actually would be opposed to the idea that religion exists inside of science, the geneticists would be, because essentially they're the people who could play God mostly.
Yeah.
They could control what is created and what isn't. But this guy, he was a prominent geneticist, but he made a book basically saying God is in science. And that kind of, the one time I thought about whether the two blended or not. And not that I never really did it often, but this one time I was actually looking at it, and the guy wrote that book, and I was like, you know what? Okay, it was almost like confirmation. Like, all right, I just need to keep my same thought process. But touching on religion, how it affected me, school definitely came into play. But I think setting an example through being involved with religion and Christianity, and also my integrity, I think all that kind of helped with setting an example for people. I think you mentioned influencing you in a positive way. I think a lot of what I did wasn't on purpose to influence people, but I felt like living by example is the best way to show that there's good in being, I guess, on this path, right, if you decide to. And so I always try to keep that in mind, and that's why I try to be the best I could be in that role.
Yeah. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. At this point in the conversation, we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Cube LA podcast.